Tennessee Life is sponsored by
Mid-South Sewing is an authorized brother dealer and repairs all brands of machines. Mid-South Sewing, known for their many fabrics, classes, and individual instructions. Classes on sewing and embroidery machines, software, sergers, and quilting. Mid-South Sewing, Knoxville and Murfreesboro.
Tennessee Life is also brought to you by Next to New, an upscale consignment shop serving Knoxville. nexttonewknox.com. And by The Flower Pot, for over 100 years, offering flowers and same-day delivery with 2 convenient Knoxville locations. knoxvilleflowerpot.com. And by viewers like you. Thank you. Coming up on this edition of Tennessee Life. From backwoods legend to front and center tourist attraction, Moonshine is getting attention from a new audience. Visit Sugarland's Distilling Company, where people can sip new flavors while learning about the old moonshining ways.
I want them to walk out of Sugarland's knowing a little bit more about the actual history and heritage of this area than they would get in a lot of places.
From the roots of moonshine comes a new focus on whiskey. We're there as Knox Whiskey Works fills its first bottles.
The best part of my job is I come in the morning, I unlock the door, and immediately get hit with the smell of fermentation.
And we visit Tennessee's first legal moonshine distillery to learn more about the science and process behind making shine. More on the spirits that helped shape a culture on this Tennessee Life.
Thanks for joining us for this edition of Tennessee Life. I'm Vicki Lawson. For years it was hidden and brewed in the woods, but today in Tennessee, moonshine distilleries are out in the open, legal, and becoming must-see spots for tourists and locals alike. We sat down with the owner of Sugarland's Distilling Company in Gatlinburg to find out more about Tennessee's historic connection to moonshine. We are here with Ned Vickers, owner of Sugarland's Distillery, and I understand that you grew up in Sevier County.
I did grow up in Sevier County. We moved here when I was about 5, and I've spent the rest of my life here.
So you have really seen Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge grow. Tell me a little bit about the changes that you have witnessed.
There have been changes over the years. Obviously, when Dollywood came into town, that had a huge impact on the area. It's been fun to watch, and it's been fun to be a part of it for the last 10 or 12 years.
I understand that you own more businesses in this area. Tell me about those.
I started out in real estate development, and so I have several real estate developments here, but then I got into attractions management. So I have Magic Quest here, which is just a ton of fun, and the Tomb and Pigeon Forge Cinemas and putt-putt courses and things like that.
So what made you get into the moonshine business?
Well, my head distiller and I started homebrewing beer right after college. So we've done that for about 20 years, and it was just kind of a natural progression into moonshine after the 2009 law passed in Tennessee. Something that we've really enjoyed being able to do on a commercial scale.
Tell me a little bit about the road and the process you had to take to get moonshine legal here.
Well, before 2009, there were Prohibition-era laws in the state of Tennessee that limited distilleries to 3 counties. That was Lincoln County, Moore County, and Coffee County, which are where Jack Daniels and George Dickel were. In 2009, the state legislature recognized the growth of micro-distilleries nationwide and what an impact it could have on the farming community in the state of Tennessee, and agreed to open the right to operate a distillery up across the state, depending on the alcohol laws in each specific county. From that, it was just a natural progression that distilleries would open in East Tennessee, where the heritage of moonshine is so great.
Tell me about Sugarlands, why you chose that name.
Sugarlands is an area of the national park, and it was known as Moonshiner's Paradise. Actually, Horace Kephart, in a famous book he wrote, early 1900s, referred to the Sugarlands as Moonshiner's Paradise, so it just made sense. Part of the allure of moonshine in this area is the history and heritage of the Scots-Irish settlers that came into town. Had to have something as a base for medicines, as a cash crop, a way to get their corn to market. So it's got a lot of history and heritage here, and I think that's why we've had such a good reception from the tourists to this area.
Whether or not you drink moonshine, moonshine is very much a part of Tennessee history.
It is.
What are the similarities and some of the differences in making moonshine now the legal way versus the illegal way?
I think legalizing it has allowed us to tell the story on such a large scale. There's a lot of misconceptions about moonshine, and actually being able to tell the story, let people taste it here, we've been able to dispel some of the inaccuracies and been able to bring it to a much broader audience.
We've seen the experience of wineries and the craft beer. Do you think now is the time for liquor to take its place in our market?
Absolutely. You know, moonshine was a farmer's liquor. They made moonshine because the roads were so bad that they couldn't get their corn to market economically.
Where do your raw ingredients come from?
We try to source our raw ingredients as locally as possible. Now there's some grains that we just can't get locally, but definitely all of our white corn is from Tennessee. We get our water here from Gatlinburg. You know, we just try to buy as local as we can.
So what do you do with some of the products after you've made the moonshine?
We take all our spent grain, and we have a farmer here locally who has a large herd of cattle. He feeds the spent grains to the cattle, and they love it. We have cattle who can't quite walk a straight line, but you know, it helps with marbling, it helps with them adding weight, and it's the farmer and the cattle love it.
So that corn still has a
Just a slight bit of alcohol left in it. We're not able to get all the alcohol out of the grain. Now, truth be told, most of it probably evaporates, you know, when it's put out to feed. So.
But the cows are happy.
But the cows love it.
There's some well-known moonshine legends. Did that have any influence in some of your moonshine?
Probably not the well-known moonshine legends. There are a lot of moonshiners that nobody ever hears about who've been doing it their whole lives. And so we sought those people out. We did not talk to any of the well-known moonshine, you know, the Popcorn Suttons of the world, you know, people like that. But we did talk to a lot of people who had been doing it their whole lives.
Can you tell me a little bit more about some of those that you did talk to?
Yeah, one of the first guys I talked to was an old moonshiner from Del Rio. And he agreed to talk to me. Actually, a judge friend of mine set me up with him. So that was kind of a funny connection. But one of the first things he said was, well, what kind of corn are you going to use? And at that point, I had no idea. I said, I don't know. What kind of corn should I use? And I still remember what he said. He said, well, yellow corn's for critters, white corn's for whiskey. So I said, well, I guess we're using white corn then. And so that's you know, one of our signatures.
There are some moonshine legends, so to speak, that were very prominent in reality TV.
Right.
How did that become a part of your marketing and into your business?
Well, it started with product development. These guys have been making moonshine their whole lives. And so we really wanted to kind of lean on them to learn the way that moonshine, authentic moonshine, should be made. And that starts with Jim Tom Hedrick. He's been moonshining since he was about 14 years old. He's well into his 70s now, so he's done it a time or two. Mark Rogers is another old moonshiner and outdoorsman. He claims that he never saw folding money until he was 18 years old. So, you know, he grew up in the backwoods of North Carolina. His first house was a cabin he built with his own hands. So just some really great stories from these guys and a lot of great experience.
You have all different flavors of moonshine, but you have a signature moonshine. Tell me about that.
It's called Silver Cloud. And we spent about 18 months working with and talking with moonshiners from East Tennessee, from Eastern Kentucky, from North Carolina, about the way that they went about making their moonshine. And so Silver Cloud is a reference to the Cosby Silver Cloud, the type of still. It was a stainless steel still with a copper head on it that a lot of the big moonshiners in Cosby used. It's what they call a sugar shine. It's a sour mash that uses Tennessee white corn, 50% Tennessee white corn and 50% cane sugar. It has a real clean taste and is a great substitute for tequila or a substitute for vodka with just a little bit more of the corn sweetness to it.
So you have a signature flavor, but tell me about some of the other flavors.
Well, we've partnered with some of the moonshiners who appear on the show Moonshiners. And one of the most famous and a man who's been moonshining for most of his life is Jim Tom Hedrick. And so one of his favorite moonshines is a rye moonshine, and it's basically a rye whiskey that's unaged. We make all our Jim Tom Hedrick's rye moonshine right here in this still. It won a gold medal at San Francisco World Spirits last year, so we're very proud of that. We also have a lot of great flavored moonshines that are a little lower in proof. Our best seller is our apple pie, which is kind of a caramel, green apple flavor. People seem to love it. We have a great peach flavor. We have a cinnamon flavor that's out of this world.
In the facility that you have here, you're not just selling moonshine, you have other products. Tell me about that. Tell me about your store.
Well, we have a lot of retail products. You know, we're in a tourist area, so people want shirts and they want hats. We also have a great barbecue sauce that we did in collaboration with Dead End Barbecue in Knoxville that people seem to love. We have a peach moonshine barbecue that we actually add peach moonshine to. They cook the alcohol out so anybody can eat it, but you really taste that peach moonshine. Then we also have a rye moonshine barbecue sauce. Same thing, we cook the alcohol out of it, but you really taste that rye flavor in the barbecue sauce. We are just getting started with what we call the whiskey project. So we're taking our rye moonshine, barreling it, and it becomes rye whiskey. And so we're real excited about that.
If you greeted someone at the door as they came in, what would you want them to experience here at Sugarlands?
I would want them to experience what we call the mountain way. You know, it's very inviting, it's sharing, I have something that I don't really need, and I'm going to share it with my neighbors who do. And I want them to walk out of Sugarlands knowing a little bit more about the actual history and heritage of this area than they would get in a lot of places.
Ned, thank you for sharing your Sugarlands distillery with us today, and thank you for sharing it on Tennessee Live.
Oh, thank you.
Later on Tennessee Life, from corn to the jar, Old Smoky Moonshine shows us the process behind making that good old Mountain Dew. But first, we're there as a new distillery pours out its first run of Knoxville-made whiskey.
There's another spirit that has roots in moonshine, whiskey. Knoxville is now home to a whiskey distillery that just started filling its first bottles. We took a tour of Knox Whiskey Works with the head distiller and one of the company founders. They say it's time for whiskey to take center stage in the world of spirits, and Tennessee is the perfect place to do it.
The words Tennessee and whiskey were almost meant to go together. The best part of my job is I come in the morning, I unlock the door, and immediately get hit with the smell of fermentation. There's nothing like that in any other industry anywhere else. It's almost like an espresso in the morning. My name is Ryan Catlett, and I'm the head distiller at Knox Whiskey Works. Everybody has heard about a guy who knows a guy who makes moonshine in the woods of East Tennessee. When the laws changed, we're not in the woods anymore. The interest came from just, I guess, kind of wanting to be a part of the history and the culture of the region, but doing it in a legal way. It's the next chapter in the history of the region once the laws opened up and allowed for legal distilleries. We're trying to put a local Knoxville spin on our version of a time-honored tradition and passion that is whiskey.
The passion for whiskey in this state, it goes back to a couple different things, a couple different ideas of how people, viewed where they came from, how they interacted with the land. We have a wealth of agricultural land in this state, and one of the things we grow really well is corn. And so it turns out turning your corn into good sipping whiskey really kind of makes a lot of sense when you look at the economics and when you look at just trying to get your product to the market, especially in a historical sense. We're really excited to be working with River Plains Farm just over in Jefferson County along the Holston. They've really focused on growing two great heirloom varieties of corn that were very traditional in whiskey making in this state. It's a beautiful, beautiful corn that you just don't see anymore. And it's kind of, it's where it all starts. This is definitely our take on good drinking whiskey. Now, we're not going to try to reinvent the wheel here. That work's been done for us. What we're trying to do is bring a true respect for making that whiskey. And that's by utilizing our local growers, by really making it representative of our land. To grab a term from the wine industry, we're looking at developing our terroir. We want this corn, we want this bottle of whiskey to really represent the spirit of East Tennessee, the spirit of Knoxville. We will be opening with our core 4 products. We'll have an heirloom corn whiskey. It's the Old City heirloom corn whiskey that we're distilling from locally sourced corn from the Niceleys, from River Plains. We'll also offer a Jackson Avenue gin. Our gin is an expression of kind of that East Tennessee wildflower, while also being true to the juniper nature of gin.
There's a lot more that goes into this job than just throwing a bag of corn in a hot pot. You kind of have to know how hot do you want that pot? What's the mill on your corn? There's a lot of aspects in this job, in this industry, than just the actual production process. When people ask me what I do, I tell them I've got the best job in the world. And I really do. I get to make whiskey multiple times a week. And it's also the scientific aspects, I think, of where the real interest lies. So, you've got times, you've got temperatures, you've got enzymatic properties, you've got different chemical compounds, some you want, some you don't want. And that happens in mashing, that happens in fermentation, and that happens in distillation. Knowing which ones that you want and the compounds and the profiles that you want in each whiskey, is where the interest is, and honestly, that's where the enjoyment is also.
For so many years, we were very limited in Tennessee with the number of distilleries that we could have, and in the last 6 to 8 years, we've had a real renaissance. And so it's just great to see. We've got great friends in this industry, and we love seeing the success they've had. We love seeing how the consumers have interacted with their brands, and we're really excited to be able to offer Knox Whiskey Works to our fellow East Tennesseans. And we really look forward to growing across the state and looking at sending it out across the U.S. as well.
There's a special feeling that you get when you make a product with your hands and that people enjoy.
Old Smoky Moonshine has the distinction of being Tennessee's first legal moonshine distillery. We went into the archives to bring you this story when they first opened their doors in Gatlinburg. They showed us more about the age-old process of making shine, from corn to the copper still.
I'm Joe Baker. I'm from Sevier County. I grew up in the Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg area. And we started Old Smoky Distillery in July of '09. The law passed in Tennessee that allowed for the distillation of spirits. We quickly started the process to get licensed at the federal level and then the state level. And in about June of 2010, we started distilling our first spirits. My family has lived in the area for the last 200 years or so, and it's just been part of our heritage and our culture. Moonshine has just been part of the way of life here in East Tennessee. And being around it, hearing about it growing up, it was something that was always interesting to me. And finally, the opportunity to share that with folks from all over the world was exciting to us. Our ingredients, including our corn, all comes from here in Tennessee. We mill it locally, and we have good friends and family that are involved in milling the corn so that we can ensure that we've got the freshest ingredients to start the distillation process.
Well, my name's Clive Valentine. We live here in Jefferson County, and we've been grinding corn in our little mill for several years now. And we got connected with the little whiskey still in Gatlinburg to grind our corn. We're grinding corn for them up there. And we're growing some of the old original hickory cane variety that we've had the heirloom seed in the family for 25, 30 years now that I know of. The old-timey hickory cane corn that we're growing here that we've kept as an heirloom seed, the old-timers used everything about it. When this corn is just putting on the silk, and the silk's is first starting to turn brown, it's soft and tender and it makes a real good sweet corn. And then when it dries and turns down on the stalk, it grinds real well and makes a real sweet cornmeal. One of the main reasons that they quit using this corn as much, or as it fell out of fashion, as some people would say, is that it grows real tall. The corn behind me back here is over 12 foot tall, and we're in a kind of a low area here, so the wind didn't bother us too bad. But if you can imagine being in a large field, this would blow down real easy. So the new varieties of corn, they've changed that. And this, for the most part, don't produce as much corn per acre because you have to spread it out more than you do the new varieties of corn that they're using today. So it's not used as much anymore, but it makes the best cornmeal and the best grits on the market. I'm not real familiar about the early whiskey making. That my grandfather was an old Baptist preacher, so we didn't have too much whiskey talk in our family, but this is the only corn, for the most part, that was grown in East Tennessee back years ago. So this was the corn that they made their hooch out of back years ago. Once we get our corn, we bring it here to the Valentine Mill, which is here at Deep Springs, just outside of Dandridge, Tennessee. When we bring our corn in, we've got a loading system outside that brings it in. We put it in our bins upstairs, and then it comes down into the elevators, goes through a cleaning system that's got a scouring machine and a sifter and a blower system on it. Get the corn good and clean, get all the dust and shuck and cob out of it. And then it comes into the hopper above me right here, above the stones. This is the stones where the process is actually done. We grind it. Once it's ground, it comes through the spout, and this elevator takes it back upstairs. It goes through a bolter sifter system that separates out the bran from the cornmeal and the grit from the cornmeal, and comes out in the boxes here behind me. And then it's bagged up, weighed out, and brought to the sewing machine here and sew the bag up, stamp our name, and it's ready to be sent up to the whiskey still to make whiskey.
Hi, I'm Justin King. I work for Old Smoky Distillery. I'm the master distiller here, and I'm going to show you how our process works. We bring all the corn in from Clive's Mill, Valentine Mills, and we actually do a corn wash. We actually heat water up, we add our corn to it, and that makes all your starches in the corn turn into fermentable sugars. We then actually cool the corn down back down to room temperature. We add our yeast to it, and then at that point we pump it in the fermenters to start our fermentation process. During the fermentation process, the yeast eats up all the natural sugars in the corn that we'd converted from the starch, and that's what actually makes our alcohol. Then we pump it actually into our pot still, and at that point you heat it up to around 175 degrees. That's when the alcohol separates back from the corn mash, and it's sent through our still, it's condensed, and you have moonshine. My favorite is just your traditional corn whiskey. It's a true East Tennessee moonshine.
When we started the business, it was important to us to use local products, and when we started the construction, we tore down a lot of barns and old cabins that otherwise would have been lost. Everything from displays and walls to shelving for our jars of whiskey that we sell. So our product starts in the soil here in Tennessee. We try to bring it straight from the ground and mill it, our corn, and try to create a good fresh product that's all made here in Tennessee. We're proud of the traditions and culture here in the mountains, and Moonshine is from corn, and here in Tennessee, there are a lot of things we're good at, but we're awfully proud of the way we make whiskey.
We hope you've enjoyed this spirited edition of Tennessee Life. Whether you enjoy your favorite drink from a glass or a mason jar, cheers to you. I'm Vicki Lawson. See you next time.
Tennessee Life is sponsored by
Mid-South Sewing is an authorized brother dealer and repairs all brands of machines. Mid-South Sewing, known for their many fabrics, classes, and individual instructions. Classes on sewing and embroidery machines, software, sergers, and quilting. Mid-South Sewing, Knoxville and Murfreesboro.
Tennessee Life is also brought to you by Next to New, an upscale consignment shop serving Knoxville. nexttoknox.com, and by The Flower Pot, for over 100 years, offering flowers and same-day delivery with 2 convenient Knoxville locations, knoxvilleflowerpot.com, and by viewers like you. Thank you. A DVD of this program is available by visiting easttennesseepbs.org.